Welcome, families and friends of Great Hearts Live Oak. I'm Cindy Audello, headmaster of Great Hearts Live Oak, and we are absolutely thrilled to share the details regarding our grand opening of our beautiful new campus. We have waited for so long for this day, and we're so pleased to share it with you. But before I do, I want to give a hearty and earnest thank you. Thank you to our families. Thank you to our scholars. We see the commitment and the sacrifice, the dedication that you are making in this period of distance learning. We are humbled by the efforts that you are making. We feel your love. We feel your commitment. And we want you to know we reciprocate it. We are here for you. We're here together on this journey. By now, many of you are well acquainted with our phased-in opening schedule featuring our owls and our Oaks days. And today what we want to do is share some of the specific principles which have shaped the plan and the many details about that plan so that you understand how learning on campus will look and feel for your scholars, both those who are on campus and those who continue to learn from home. I want to assure you that our planning is thoughtful and it's made in careful reference to the things that we value most as an academy. Families and teachers who choose Great Hearts, they do so because of our commitment to our inspirational culture of high expectations and the joyful pursuit of the true, the good, and the beautiful. We choose Great Hearts because of our rich and carefully sequenced curriculum, which trains the heart as well as the intellect. We choose Great Hearts because of our commitment to our community. We unapologetically partner with our parents, and we work very, very hard within our walls and also our screens to cultivate friendship and citizenship amongst our scholars. So the first planning principle is to preserve what we love, to preserve our culture, our curriculum, and our community. Our mission has not and will not change. The second planning principle is consistency. A Great Hearts education is particularly effective because we truly sweat the small stuff. We carefully plan and refine our structures and our procedures so that our teachers and scholars quickly know what to expect so that they can go about their work with joy, focus, and curiosity. Our phased-in plan gives our wonderful teachers the time that they need to carefully and lovingly coach our scholars in the procedures and the routines that will not only support learning and friendship, but which will also support safety. We are so blessed to have a community that is excited about launching this campus, but this also means that we have to plan for a lot of eager scholars in our building. 65% of our students have opted for campus-based instruction. Now, we're confident that we can do this well and that we can do it safely, but we are going to need to give your children the focused attention that they deserve and need to learn the routines and the structures well. And our plan provides that opportunity. It's important to state too that our goal is not simply to open. Our goal is to stay open and to effectively support our learners, whether they are learning at home or on campus. Our plan for concurrent instruction ensures that Live Oak will offer continuous and high quality instruction, the education that you expect and deserve throughout the school year, while still maintaining the bonds of trust and friendship that have already begun to form. Our plan keeps our classroom sections intact So whether a student is learning from home or from the campus, most of our scholars will remain in their same section. There will be a few adjustments in order to ensure that our campus-based scholars are evenly distributed within our classrooms, and we need to do this to maximize the physical distancing within our building. But all of our scholars will continue to see the same grade level teachers and specialists that they've already come to know and to love. Consistent and uninterrupted learning for our scholars is also why we have chosen to keep the Google Classrooms open for the families of our campus-based learners. Now, this doesn't mean that students in the building will be learning from screens. They certainly will not. It will be primarily live instruction and all of the movement that you would expect from campus-based instruction. But it does mean that our parents will continue to be able to access the Google Classrooms, to see the grade level newsletters, to look at the content, the material, to learn alongside our scholars. But it also means that in an event that a scholar needs to learn from home for a day, maybe they're sick or maybe they have to go into quarantine, it gives our scholar the opportunity to seamlessly move right back into distance-based instruction without missing a beat. Finally, it's important to explicitly state that our plan values safety. We love classical education for all kinds of reasons, but at its core, classical education is humane. We value the dignity and the humanity of all of our students, our teachers, and their families, and we are excited about a plan that puts emotional and physical safety at the top of our list as our highest priority. In a moment, I'm going to hand over the screen to several members of our team who will share with you the details of how we will pursue the true, the good, and the beautiful, strengthen and protect our community, ensure uninterrupted instruction, and do it all while keeping the members of our community as safe as possible. So we will start with Mr. Paul Gostowski, one of our assistant headmasters, who will share with you the details of the phase-in schedule and also describe how the instructional day for our campus-based learners offers layers of protection for their safety and for the safety of our teachers as well. Following Mr. Gostowski will be Mr. Schuster, one of our third grade teachers, and he's going to share how he and his colleagues have been planning a rich, safe, and engaging school day for all of our scholars, whether they're at home or here. And then finally, Mr. Kevin Jackson, who is our Dean of Students and also our Campus COVID Response Coordinator. He will be sharing the different measures and safeguards that we are taking to make sure that our campus is safe and that it's clean and that we are responding in a way that's effective in the event that we have a confirmed case of COVID-19 within our community. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and hand it over to Mr. Gostowski.
Thank you, Ms. Adello, and thank you for your leadership over the past several months that has gotten us to this point where we can open our physical doors and create a learning environment that is safe, flexible, takes into account all stakeholders, and is most definitely uniquely Great Hearts. I'd like to take the next few minutes to go over two specific items. First, the phase-in plan. Who's coming in the building and when and at what frequency? And second, discuss some of the preventative measures we have made to our physical environment that can best ensure the safety of our students and staff once they're in the building. So in a moment, you'll be able to see the plan on the screen, and the plan starts on Monday, September 14th, for our youngest scholars in kinder, first, and second. And we'll continue to bring more students into the building over the following 2 weeks until we reach our full capacity of campus-based learners on Friday, September 25th, which, by the way, is an early release day. Under this plan, each class will be divided in half, and each in-person scholar will receive a designation as either an owl or an oak. And the owls and oaks will then alternate which days they're on campus. These designations will be sent home tomorrow afternoon through an email by the school. So, if you have chosen for your scholar to be an in-campus learner, please look out for that communication from our school Friday afternoon. In addition to limiting our capacity to 50% of our campus-based learners, this 2-week plan also prioritizes our youngest scholars and recognizes the need to get them practicing some of our new procedures as early as possible. Let's look at the details of this plan. On Monday, September 14th, kinder, first, and second grade owls will be on campus for their first day of in-person instruction. And on Tuesday, September 15th, the second half of the in-person kinder, first, and second graders, also known as the Oaks, will have their first day on campus, while their owl counterparts stay home for a day of distance learning. The kinder, first, and second grade owls and Oaks will alternate like this for 2 weeks. The next group of scholars to enter the building and join our kinder, first, and second graders will be our third, fourth, and fifth graders. If you're in these grades and designated as an owl, then your first day on campus will be Wednesday, September 16th. And if you're designated as an Oak, then your first day will be Thursday, September 17th. The day you are not on campus, you'll be a distance learner. Please note that all students will be distance learners on Friday, September 18th. The second week, starting Monday, September 21st, all campus-based learners designated as owls in grades kinder through 6th and all 7th graders, all 7th grade campus-based learners will be on campus. The owls and Oaks will alternate on campus learning until Thursday, September 24th. And finally, on Friday, September 25th, all campus-based learners, Oaks and owls, will be on campus to receive their instruction. Again, please note this is an early release Friday. We feel this plan allows our campus to be safe while practicing how to be safe in this new environment. I'm sure right now many of you are wondering, what exactly does 50% mean? And more precisely, how many students will be in my child's physical classroom at one time? Based on our survey results, 65% of students have opted for campus-based instruction, and this translates to approximately 19 to 22 students per class. So by dividing this in half for our first 2 weeks of campus-based instruction, you can expect approximately 10 to 11 students in your child's class during the Owls and Oaks phase-in plan. Again, we feel this plan gives us the best opportunity to bring students back into the building in a responsible manner and accounts for the learning curve necessary to practice those routines that can best ensure that our doors will remain open. Now that we've gone over who will be in the building, I'd like to discuss some of the preventative measures we have taken in response to COVID-19. It's important to note that we are taking a layered approach to safety and believe that by combining multiple practices, this gives us the best opportunity to mitigate possible exposure to COVID-19. We at Great Hearts are following TEA guidelines, so I'd like to start by reading some language directly from the TEA. While it is not possible to eliminate all risk of furthering the spread of COVID-19, the current science suggests there are many steps schools can take to reduce the risk to students, teachers, staff, and their families significantly, end quote. So first, we're going to do our best to create the recommended 6 feet of distance between all people on campus, both students and staff, when possible. This means that our scholars' desks will be separated to the maximum extent possible within their classrooms, and we'll teach our scholars how to create a double arm's length or double wings length line. We've also created staggered transition times in our schedules to utilize one-way hallway directional flow to try to mitigate students congregating or even passing by one another in a tight space. Second, each classroom will become its own pod and not commingle with other classes. Every activity they will do within their pod. This means that they will not be eating lunch in the cafeteria with other classes, but rather in an alternate location that could either be their classroom, an empty room, yes, we are blessed to have a few of those, or even possibly outside. The specifics of this will be determined by the teacher and by the grade level. Recess will still occur, but we have several outside designated areas that will be used for recess. Students will have an opportunity to play outdoors, but instead of with their entire grade level, it will be with their pod mates. Keeping students in their pods will be an effective way to minimize possible exposure between classes and also help contain spread if there is known exposure. Third, face coverings. We have recently updated our face covering policy, and I'd like to clarify that face shields will no longer constitute as an acceptable face covering for adults and students in grades 4 through 7. Staff and students in grades 4 through 7 will be required to wear a face mask at all times, with few exceptions. Face coverings will not be required while you're eating or when you're outside during recess, PE, or another class time while maintaining an appropriate social distance. For grades kinder, 1st, 2nd, and 3rd, face shields are acceptable face coverings and also may be removed while your scholar is seated at their desk. This exception is specific to these grades because kinder through 3rd will have a plexiglass barrier attached to their desk that will allow for students in kinder through 3rd to remove their mask while seated at their desk. Please note that we do have some aesthetic face covering guidelines. Face coverings and face shields may be a solid color or pattern. However, no symbols, brand logos, or references to pop culture are permitted. Similarly, no messages, words, slogans, statements of any content will be allowed. We will, however, allow for Great Hearts or Great Hearts Live Oak branded face coverings, and we will allow for individuals' names for identification purposes allowed on the face mask. We appreciate your adherence to these guidelines. 4th is sanitation. Students will be taught proper hand washing, and we will be utilizing hand sanitizer when hand washing is not available. We have installed hand sanitizer dispensers in every classroom and throughout the building to help ensure clean hands throughout the day. Finally, our nurse, Mrs. Carrie Liao, will be training all teachers on proper hand washing, sanitation, and germ mitigation techniques to ensure we're doing everything in our power to keep our students healthy. With that, I'd like to hand the presentation over to Mr. Joseph Schuster, one of our 3rd grade teachers, to talk a little bit about what you can expect inside the classroom.
Thank you, Mr. Gostowski. Hello, Live Oak families. As you know, my name is Mr. Schuster. I'm so very happy to be here with you this afternoon. All the teachers here at Live Oak and I are beyond excited to welcome your children into our classrooms. Before I say anything else, I just first have to deliver a huge thank you from all the teachers here at Live Oak to you. Your communication and support and partnership throughout these past weeks have been truly unbelievable. And so we are just so grateful for your support to your scholars and to us. So we've noticed and we thank you for that. So Mr. Gostowski talked about many of the changes that are coming up as we phase into our concurrent model, some big changes, some small. And I want to speak a little bit about how I will see these changes in my classroom. But one of the best ways as a teacher that I've been able to wrap my mind around these changes is to frame them side by side with the things that are unchanging, the things that will endure and will remain sure and steady throughout the time of transition. So the first thing that will endure is the relationship that we've been building with all of our scholars, regardless of whether they are distant learners or campus-based students. If these first few weeks of school have taught us teachers anything, it is that even distance learning cannot stop the teachers from knowing and loving each of your children. My 3rd grade team members and I have been talking about this, and I'm sure all the other faculty members would agree with me, that the individual personalities and gifts and ideas and talents of your students have just been bubbling through our screens, into our hearts and into our classrooms. So the upcoming phase-in plan will not change this. I only see it as strengthening those relationships, especially as we welcome our scholars into the building for the first time, but also as we continue to make space for synchronous sessions with our distance learning scholars on Zoom. The actual times of these sessions will be shifting and changing in these coming weeks, but what will not change is that there will still be synchronous time and that we will continue to develop strong relationships with each and every one of our students. The second thing that will endure is our commitment as teachers to delivering your child a rich, rigorous classical education, to read the classics, to recite poetry, to engage in Spalding and in Singapore math, all of the things we know and love about Great Heart Schools. All of the teachers here, including myself, are very committed to creating high quality lessons for your scholar. Of course, how we deliver those lessons may look a little different as we phase into the concurrent model. So we will continue to use the Google Classroom to engage our distance learners, as Ms. Adello said, through instructional videos and activities and some synchronous instruction over Zoom. But we'll also start to deliver lessons live in our classrooms for our campus-based learners, which is so exciting. For some subjects in campus-based learning, we may use pre-recorded instructional videos as well for some subjects. So for example, Spalding, I may project a video from my third grade team member, Miss Longfellow, onto my whiteboard just for the first portion of my Spalding lesson. But I want to take a moment to assure you that this does not mean that our campus-based learners will be sitting at their desks all day watching videos, just stuck behind their desk shield. That is definitely not what we teachers have in mind. And the instruction that we deliver here in the building will be predominantly live. And also, just as we've been encouraging our distance learners to do at home right now, here in the classroom, we'll also be encouraging our students to take breaks. We'll be breathing and stretching out our owl wings and our live oak tree branches. We'll be engaging in a PE lesson with Coach Gonzalez, or a music lesson with Miss Orton, or maybe even going outside for a lesson. We have a beautiful campus here, and we also have several extra large rooms that we can move to for different lessons, so scholars can sit down, spaced out, and engage in a read aloud. The third thing that will endure as we phase into our concurrent method is the community bond that we've begun to form with our students. So I think just one of the huge benefits that resulted from starting the year off with all of our students as distance learners is that it gave our scholars the opportunity to form a strong bond and connection with their teachers and with their class section, to feel that they are an important part of the whole class community. And I see this transition to concurrent instruction as only making this bond stronger. Because as a teacher, I won't just be seeing my class separated into my distance learning third graders and my campus-based third graders. I will see them all as Mr. Schuster's Live Oak Owls, as my 3C scholars, and the upcoming transition will not change that. In fact, I think that having our students in smaller groups of Oaks and Owls during the phase-in will encourage more connections and form stronger friendships in my class community. In addition to pods that students will be in when they are fully concurrent, all on campus, I only see this as adding to the sense of identity and belonging among our students. And I also see that our concurrent model allows for some exciting possibilities for enhancing our distance learners' sense of community too, such as having a Zoom lunch shared with the campus-based scholars, just giving all of our scholars in our section opportunities for conversation and friendship. The fourth thing that will endure as we transition to the concurrent instruction model is having clear expectations and procedures for our students. So we will continue to hold our distance learning scholars to our established expectations, but as we welcome our campus-based scholars into our building, we will be working very hard to establish new but very clear procedures and routines in our classrooms that will maximize the health and safety of our scholars, and at the same time, allow them to fully engage in the instruction in a way that does not feel restrictive or limited. So what does this look like? Well, I can tell you that right now, we as teachers are working very hard to design clear and consistent procedures for many aspects of our day-to-day classroom activities. So this includes procedures for many aspects of our day, such as when and how we wear our face coverings, for how we will safely navigate our classrooms and hallways in a way that ensures safe distancing. So as Mr. Gostowski mentioned, having double wings length or branch length in our hallways as we're moving from class to class. Also for how we will be washing our hands and sanitizing, the when and how. We will also have procedures for how to take care of our desk shields in the younger grades and how we will use our school supplies and carry things from home and school. So it's going to look a little bit different for every grade level, but our goal as teachers is to practice and implement procedures that will maximize the health and safety of your children and make them feel supported and cared for rather than confined or restricted. And just as a side note, I really think that our phasing in plan in smaller groups of Oaks and Owls will really give us teachers the opportunity to model these routines and practice them with our students so they feel comfortable with them and confident in their own ability to achieve our expectations by the time we're fully concurrent and have all of our scholars campus-based. Finally, I just want to tell all of you something that I've been telling my third graders. We've been reading The Little House on the Prairie by Laura Ingalls Wilder, which is the true story of the Ingalls family leaving their secure home in the big woods of Wisconsin and moving all the way out west in a covered wagon into the prairie and into unfamiliar territory. And I can't help but think of how your children are pioneers right now. No one has ever done this before. This is new. This is unfamiliar territory. And you, your children, the amazing team of teachers and administrators that I feel very lucky to be a part of, together, we are truly paving the way, moving onward into this uncharted territory. And just like in the little house on the prairie, things are not going to be easy and familiar all the time. There are going to be hardships and challenges all along the way, but we would be missing an opportunity if we didn't view these challenges as opportunities to grow in virtue and wisdom and perseverance and patience. And so I just wanted to leave you with a quick quote by Laura Ingalls Wilder. She says, "There is good in everything if only we look for it." So yes, these next few weeks will bring a lot of challenges and changes for our students and for our teachers, but I firmly believe that there is also so much good to be gained and growth to be made in the midst of these challenges, if only we look for it. So with that perspective, I would like to pass the screen to our Dean of Students, Mr. Jackson, as he addresses some of the more practical protocol of our health and safety measures.
Thank you, Mr. Schuster. Good afternoon, Live Oak families. I am Kevin Jackson, the Dean of Student Culture here at Great Hearts Live Oak. I'd like to start by thanking you for your patience in trusting us with not only the education of those who are most dear to you, but also trusting us with their health. We can't wait to see them in person whenever they get here. As Ms. Adello mentioned, I'm also the campus COVID response coordinator. For the past 2 months, we have been preparing our new campus, not only for the upcoming school year, all the usual things, plus what it takes to open a new school, but also preparing to keep your children and our staff safe. We have thoughtfully crafted a plan to do just that. While we can't promise that no one will contract COVID-19, I want to assure you that we will go to great lengths to try to stop any infection from spreading. I'm going to mention just a few things we have done to get prepared, and after that, I will speak about our procedures for the scenarios that may occur, namely, a case of close contact, a case of exhibiting symptoms on campus, and finally, the scenario of a positive case on our campus. In addition to the process my colleague Mr. Gostowski mentioned, our day porters will be disinfecting all outdoor play structures in addition to regularly sanitizing all common surfaces that are touched throughout the day. In fact, they've been on campus since the staff has been in the building in late July. They will also sanitize classrooms throughout the day as well. All classrooms have plenty of hand sanitizer and disinfecting wipes on hand. Incidentally, there will not be any common use supplies in our classrooms. We have upgraded our air filters and our air conditioning units. We have placed masks and hand sanitizer near our entrance for ease of use for any visitors to our campus. We've also placed social distancing markers on our floors, the things we have all become accustomed to during this time. Along with what Mr. Gostowski mentioned, these are just a few of the many things we have implemented to provide that multi-layered approach to get ready for our on-campus instruction to keep your families and our staff as safe as possible. Now I'd like to talk about what happens if we have a confirmed or suspected case of COVID-19 on the campus, or someone has been exposed to someone who has tested positive. Incidentally, our procedures for other infectious illnesses are the same as they are every year. Pink eye, chickenpox, etc. Nothing has changed. You should keep your child home for the same reasons you would normally keep your child home and inform us of the absence. Our only request during this time is that you please partner with us and screen your child and perform temperature checks at home before coming to the campus. If your child has a fever or any of the symptoms now showing on the screen, we ask that you keep them home. This list is based on CDC and TEA guidance. We realize that it is a long list, so I'd like to offer some help. We are looking for the sudden onset of any of these symptoms that is out of the ordinary for your child. What I mean is, if your child displays any of these symptoms in a manner that is not normal for them, for example, if allergies normally cause sniffles in the morning, then there's no need to keep your scholar at home. Other ordinary or normal things could be a cough before taking their inhaler in the morning for asthma, or perhaps for dietary reasons, they get a headache. You know what is out of the ordinary for your child. What we're asking is during these very unordinary times, if they display these symptoms shown just a moment ago, and which are available online, and that is not usual or par for the course for your child, then please keep them home and let us know. We realize that initially, this may cause more students to be absent than in a normal school year. As Ms. Adello mentioned, we are going to continue to hang assignments in their Google Classrooms. Your child will have the same access to our curriculum as those who are learning concurrently, just as if you had opted for distance learning. Our staff will self-evaluate as well before coming to the campus, and we will follow the same guidelines. That is, we will stay at home if we exhibit symptoms that are out of the ordinary for us. Now I would like to talk about the three scenarios I mentioned earlier, namely, 1, if these symptoms manifest themselves on campus, an instance of close contact, and finally, a confirmed case. These apply to a staff member as well as a scholar. In all these scenarios, we will take distinct actions, some of which will be the same. All the actions are designed to stop the possible spread of infection. Firstly, if symptoms manifest themselves on campus, we unfortunately must suspect COVID-19. That is to say, during this time of heightened concern, we are being more cautious. Students will be taken to the nurse and isolated from other students. Their room will be disinfected and any other area the student occupied for more than 15 minutes. We have several different areas besides the nurse's office to keep our scholars separate, but not left unattended while the nurse evaluates. Our goal is not to stigmatize them or make them feel uncomfortable in any way. We will care for them just like we would if the times were not so unusual. They will be evaluated by our trained nurse, what school nurses have been doing for decades, and she will determine whether to call you or not. We will follow the same protocols with our staff. If one of us exhibits symptoms that are not normal, like allergies, for example, at home in the morning before we come to work or at work after we get here, we will isolate ourselves and all areas frequented will be sanitized. The second scenario is someone who has been in close contact with someone who has been confirmed to have COVID-19. What is close contact? 2 things: directly exposed, that is coughed on, or they have been closer than 6 feet of the individual for more than 15 minutes. We will follow much the same procedure as outlined above: discrete removal, isolation, and sanitization of the areas frequented. This scenario and the next are more likely to take place while the staff member or scholar is at home. That is, we are more likely to find out someone in our community has been in close contact during non-school hours. In this scenario, we would ask that you provide us some details so that we can conduct contact tracing. We will do the same for you if the individual who had close contact is one of our staff members. The third and last scenario is someone testing positive for COVID-19. As I mentioned, our checklist includes sanitizing the classroom and areas heavily trafficked by the scholar or staff member. The families of students in that section will be notified that someone in their section tested positive for COVID-19. We will not release any names, of course. The larger school community will receive notice that someone in the school has tested positive. You might be asking, when can my child come back to campus? The rules are the same for our staff as well as for our students. For all of these scenarios, the staff member or scholar can come back to campus when 10 days have passed since symptoms first appeared, the symptoms have improved, and there have been no symptoms for 24 hours. This time can be shortened if there have been no symptoms for 24 hours and the student or staff member has a negative test result from an approved testing facility or an alternative diagnosis from a physician. In all these scenarios, we will perform what is called contact tracing. That is, determining who had close contact with that person so we can alert those individuals. As Mr. Gostowski mentioned, where possible, the desks have been spaced 6 feet apart. We will notify families of any scholars who are in close contact with the staff member or the scholar concerned. I want to thank you again for your patience, and I want to assure you we have thought long and hard about this. We take your family's health just as seriously as we take our own health. We are in this together. By endurance, we will conquer. I will now turn the broadcast back over to our headmaster, Ms. Adello.
Hello. Thank you. Thank you so much, Mr. Jackson, Mr. Schuster, and Mr. Gostowski for your careful planning and your careful presentation. It's a lot of information. I also want to thank our families. It is a lot of information, and you've clearly been doing your homework. And thank you for that. Thank you for continuing to reference the newsletters that have been going home, referencing our website, reading through the different links, watching the different videos. It's a partnership. And the better that we are all well versed in the information and the details, the better that this is going to go. And that's really what partnership looks like for us, that we all have a role in the education of your children and in keeping one another safe. we're going to bring in Mr. Jackson and Mr. Gostowski, who are going to help answer some of the questions that are coming up in the chat, and also some of the questions that you sent to us through the survey before the town hall. And together we will answer these questions for you. It says a lot about our parent community that you have such informed and thoughtful questions. So together we will do our very, very best to answer your concerns. There was a question, there's actually, I think, a few questions about supplies. And how will you know what to bring, right? So all the educates were here and then they went home, and what do we do now? So this is part of a larger question and concern, which has to do not just with supplies, but the very real question: how does my child know where to go? So they arrive on our campus on the very first day. What happens? How are they greeted? How do they get to their teacher? And what do they do with their backpack? That's a very valid question. And so we will be, in the next few weeks, rolling out a significant amount of information about our drop-off and pick-up procedures. We will give you detailed, specific information about what to bring on the first day of school. I think it is fair to say that we will not ask you to bring the entire educate and your student's device and pack it all into a military weight backpack and march into campus. We're not going to do that. So we will give you the very specific details of what we want you to bring for that first day of instruction, and then a coherent plan about bringing the rest of it. So do be looking for that. Now let's look at what happens when my scholar, my sweet kindergartner, arrives for the first day of school on the 14th. They've never been in the building, and it's true, parents can't come in the building either. So we hear you. Here's what I'm going to say. We are creating a plan right now that is very, very sensitive to the needs of our youngest scholars. Parents, you will be able to walk your children all the way up to the door. They will be warmly greeted, and they will be individually, safely escorted to their classrooms, where they will be greeted by their teacher, and then their teacher will help them to set up their desk and their things. It's a very warm, slow, caring process. Because we only have 10 scholars per classroom coming in on those first days. Again, that wonderful Oaks and Owls schedule that Mr. Gostowski put together for us. That really gives us the opportunity to give your scholars the individual attention and greeting that we know that they deserve. So please be looking for more concrete details about how that will work. I want to say, though, that it's not just for our kindergartners and our first graders. This building is new for all of our scholars. And so there will be, we will all be here, right? So there's a faculty and staff of 80 people here, ready and willing and anxious to greet your students and to make sure that they arrive at their classroom safely and properly greeted and welcomed. So that was an excellent question. Let's see, what else? There was an important question about the home checks, and I think that the question behind the question, if I may, is probably, well, it's really hard to know in the morning how a student is doing. What if we do a home check and everything seemed fine, or we weren't really sure. We all have those mornings. What happens if symptoms start to manifest in the middle of the morning or later in the day? Can we just rely on a home check? Mr. Jackson, do you mind speaking to that?
Absolutely not. Thank you, Ms. Adello. We are prepared if one of our students starts to exhibit symptoms on campus. So what we will do is, if our teacher notices it or they talk to their teacher and say, I don't feel so well, we will isolate that student, ask them what is going on, how do they feel, and we will discreetly escort them to the nurse's office She will do her evaluation. She has her checklist, not only her experience from the past, all of her experience, but also the new checklist to run down. And if she feels that it's possible that the child is exhibiting symptoms of COVID-19. Now remember, a lot of things are going to exhibit symptoms like this, but if in this times, as I said, we had to assume or suspect that anything is COVID-19, she will call the parent, and then you will be asked to come pick up the child. And during that time, we won't have them near other students. We're not going to make them feel ostracized. We have 2 separate rooms where we can still watch them. The door will be wide open all the time. 2 separate rooms where they will be separated. So we are not going to make your child feel stigmatized or uncomfortable in any way, and they will not be left alone.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Jackson. We have some questions about the use of technology in the classroom, but then also, interestingly enough, the use of paper in the classroom. What an interesting time that we're in. Neither one feels particularly just right. So let's first of all say very explicitly, campus-based learners will not be learning through devices stationed on their desks. When you turn in your student's device, when you come back, and don't worry, this is not anything you need to worry about now, but when that time comes, we'll let you know. That device will be safely stowed away, and it'll be used for a later day, whether that's because of map testing or something else, right? So no screens in the classrooms stationed on student desks where they are watching individual videos and submitting work. Our instructional plan is going to look and feel like a genuine Great Hearts classroom. Now, again, as Mr. Schuster said, there will be a certain amount of pre-recorded video that we will be projecting through our projectors in our classroom onto the screens. And that's actually an opportunity for us. So one of the things that being on campus means is that we have to wear masks, we have to wear face coverings, and that includes our teachers. And so one of the things that pre-recording does for us is it gives us the opportunity to pre-record a high quality Spalding lesson without a mask and without a face shield, no barrier, so that our students can see the formation of the sounds in our faces and our mouths. Same thing, for instance, for choral instruction. So one of the opportunities that the situation has given us is that we've all become very facile in recording things. And so there'll be a certain amount of that coming into the classrooms, but that's very, very different from your students learning through screens. The other question is, well, okay, but what about papers? Is handing in papers safe? So in a typical Great Hearts classroom, you might have a piece of paper that travels across a couple of desks before it reaches the teacher. You're right, that doesn't feel particularly appropriate in this given environment. And so we are building procedures and routines around that. These are things that our teachers are actively involved in, things like a tray, right? So the tray comes across, whether it's the apprentice teacher or the teacher, and the students are placing the paper in there, and then we set it aside for an appropriate period of time. So you're right to be thinking of these things. And I want you to know that we are also thinking about these because we do want everyone to feel very safe when they are on campus. We also had some questions about what happens if I have chosen distance learning. How long do I stay in the distance learning program? So thank you for asking that. We do want to make sure that we have clarity on this. So I'm going to expand the question a little bit, and I'm going to talk about whether or not we can change from one to the other, and when do we make that move. If you have chosen campus-based instruction at any time, you can move into the distance learning program. You simply need to let us know. So please notify Mrs. Hart, our registrar, so that she can make the arrangements for that. On the other hand, if you have elected for distance-based learning, then you are actually going to need to submit a request for campus-based instruction at this point, because we are well into the weeds of placing our students in the classrooms and literally moving the furniture around to make sure that our students are properly spaced at a safe distance from each other and from their teachers. So that will be a request that you will need to make. Again, submit that to Mrs. Hart. Either way, whether it's campus-based or distance-based, we are operating on a quarterly basis. So if you chose to be a distance learner, then you will be a distance learner for the remainder of the quarter. And then as we get closer to the second quarter, so sometime early in October, we will ask again, are you changing your preference? At that time, if you feel that the conditions are safe, whatever it was that caused your family to choose a distance learning option, if you want to change that preference, then for the second quarter, you can opt for campus-based instruction. Maybe you want to wait to the semester or the fourth quarter. All those options are open for you. Again, if you are a campus-based learner, you can choose distance learning at any time. You can go right in. Another question that we have been getting is, what happens if I'm a campus-based learner and for whatever reason I need to quarantine? Maybe I had significant exposure to somebody with COVID-19, a positive test for COVID-19. That is not treated the same way as moving into the distance learning program. What we would do for a scholar in that situation is simply move them right back in to Google Classroom based instruction, where they would access their pre-recorded video, their synchronous Zoom sessions. They would submit their assignments through the Google Classroom, and we would do that for the duration of the illness or the quarantine period. But then that scholar would come back into campus-based instruction when they were ready to do so. I'm just going to take a quick look at any of these other questions. Oh, this is a really interesting question. Will there be a heavier workload when we're getting back into campus-based instruction? That is such an interesting question. The difference between campus-based instruction and distance learning is not one of the content. The content is the same, but it is true that the form will feel different. There is more direct monitoring of instruction when you're in a class, which means that those assignments will be done more often than not in real time in the classroom environment. And so it's a little hard for me to answer that. I can tell you that Great Heart students work hard, whether they're in school or whether they're home. We do hard things, and there is a lot of focus and attention to work and to detail. I think the answer to the question is that the homework load for a campus-based learner will match what is typical for a Great Heart Scholar. So if you go into our family handbook, also posted on our website, you will see the homework, the time guidelines that you can expect for our scholars if they are campus-based. If they are distance learning, then homework doesn't really exist, right? Because it's all done at home, and so it's already woven into their assignments. Trying to see what else do we need to, there were some questions about the after-school program. These are excellent questions. So here's what we want you to hear about that. So I'm going to narrow my answer right now for the phase-in period. In other words, September 14th, all the way through September 24th, when we're still on that Oaks and Owls schedule. The Athenaeum program and the Homework Club will be happening. They will be staffed, but they will only be staffed and servicing the students who were actually in the building on that instructional day. So in other words, if your scholar is an owl, then your scholar will not be available to attend Athenaeum on an Oaks day, and vice versa. And then once we start full 5-day-a-week instruction for all campus-based scholars on the 25th, then we'll just roll into our regular pattern of Athenaeum and homework club. I'm going to take one quick check. This is a really good question. I'm not actually sure who wants to take this one, if it's going to be Mr. Jackson or Mr. Gostowski. But the question is, what happens if a student in our community tests positive for COVID-19? And the question is not what happens to that student, but what happens to the student who may have been sitting next to that scholar. Are they going to be required to quarantine? So the answer is almost certainly yes in that case. But Mr. Jackson or Mr. Gostowski, can you give us some indication of how we're doing the contact tracing so that we can make wise decisions and not necessarily shut down our entire classroom?
Yes, Ms. Adello. So if we have a child that tests positive, what we're going to do is talk with the teacher. We'll do what we call contact tracing. We'll talk to the teacher to find out where that child sat in the classroom and determine if those children that sat around that child were within 6 feet or closer. As we mentioned earlier, most of our classrooms do have that 6 feet. Some are maybe at 4.5, 5. The ones, no matter what the case is, no matter where the child is, whether they exhibit symptoms or they test positive or they have had close contact, we will do contact tracing. We'll determine which children sat around that child, and then we'll talk with the teacher to find those names, and then we'll contact the families and let them know.
Thank you. Okay, I am just looking through this is such a good question. This is going to be from Mr. Gostowski. How is social distancing enforced during recess?
Thank you, Ms. Adele. That is a great question. If anyone has seen recess in an elementary school, the term social distancing is it's not really part of the vocabulary. So what we are going to do, and this is typical recess practice, is we're not going to let students congregate. If we see students congregating, of course, any physical touching, horseplay, that's always been not allowed, but we are going to ask students to separate. Movement and passing by without a mask outside does not put us in the same zone as being inside a space next to a person within 6 feet. So the short answer is we're not going to have hula hoops around our students, making sure that they're socially distanced. We're not going to have them have recess with their arms out. We are going to use our discretion and best judgment to make sure students aren't congregating together for an extended period of time while they're outside.
Thank you. This is a great question. How many students are they projecting will be in a classroom at a single time? So this gets back to our statistics. And earlier, you may recall that I said that approximately 65% of our student community will be learning in the building, and that we'll all be here on September 25th. Now, that's a big statistic, and it doesn't apply to individual grades. So I do want to just caution you that the numbers are not consistent from one grade to the other. I can say that you can expect that there will be, once everyone is in, somewhere between 19 to 22 scholars in most of our classrooms. The 7th grade is a little bit different because the 7th grade is an upper school classroom, and it's a little bit smaller already by the population. So you can anticipate those numbers will be more like 15 to 17 for 7th grade, but for K through 6, somewhere between 19 to 22 students. And so it's not just a matter of spacing them out as best we can, literally removing furniture from our classrooms so that our students really can be extending all the way to the opposite ends of the walls and into the back of the classrooms. They can be spaced out. But it's also about structuring our procedures in such a way that students are entering and exiting in a way where they're not necessarily crossing paths, making sure that students aren't getting up and constantly walking by one another. So having procedures for their supplies and how they enter and how they exit, it's all built in to the planning that we're doing. And I wanted to address another question, which is, why are we not having a separate day for our families to come in and individually enter into the building with their scholar and meet their teacher? And I want to say that that is because we are a brand new school and we're still moving into our building. We're still setting things up, and we have a lot of very particular training that we need to do as a launching campus to get ready and to be successful for your scholars. So I do want to thank you for giving us an extra measure of grace on that. I can assure you, though, that we will be looking for opportunities to start bringing our families, not just our families, but even our distance learners into the building. We're going to have to ease into that, and we will be working on how to do that safely and well. We do know that it's a need, and we want you to see our beautiful building because it is beautiful, and you should see the work that our teachers are doing. I was walking down the hallway just this morning, and every time I see another bulletin board go up with our scholars' names. And again, it's not just our campus-based scholars; it's all of our scholars for our section are on the bulletin board. I've seen bulletin boards with the beautiful faces of our students. Makes me so happy going into the art room and seeing the self-portraits that Ms. Holscher's students have created. It's wonderful, and parents, truly we want to find ways to get you into this building and to celebrate with us just as soon as we can do so safely and well. Some questions about, there's a lot of what if questions in here, and I'm with you. We share them. We have them too. What happens if there's a vaccine? Do we foresee sports starting up again? We're watching. We're monitoring it. We're monitoring it with you. These are important, essential things that we need to do, activities that we need to do, not just sports, but also concerts. One of the things that's wonderful about a Great Heart School are concerts. So we are as ready to start these things as you are, and we are monitoring carefully. And as soon as it's safe to do so, then you will hear from us, and we'll get that going. So thank you for having your eye on that. And you can also anticipate that as we're waiting for that time, you'll start to receive some communication about getting ready for those opportunities in the same way that you've started to receive some communication and information about volunteer opportunities on our campuses. By the way, that is one excellent way to be on the campus is to volunteer. A huge shout out to a couple of our parents and one of our scholars who came out last Friday to greet our teachers with treats. That was absolutely wonderful. So we will be looking for that, and so please continue to submit your responses to volunteer requests to Mrs. Dick, because yes, we want you here. This brings us, I'm just doing one more quick scan of our questions. There's more to ask. There's more to say. We are always reading your emails, and we want to thank you again when we send out a survey form. We're so gratified when you answer and when you put your suggestions and your comments and your concerns in the forms. So please continue to do so. Know that we will continue to seek your input and your feedback. And that includes on our opening for campus-based instruction. So if your question wasn't answered today, it's okay. Just submit your question, and we'll do what we can to answer it. In closing, again, I want to thank you for your time. Your time is so valuable. And in closing, I want to bring our attention to just one more thing that I love about classical education and classical education in the Great Hearts way. And that is the value that we place on perseverance, and the perseverance that we develop by doing hard things, as Mr. Schuster so eloquently shared with us. We have a practice amongst our faculty and our staff on a daily basis to seek the opportunity that is present in the obstacles. Our plan leans into those opportunities and the challenges that are presented at this time. And so we're always looking for opportunities like using the vast space in the back of our campus, not just one field, but multiple fields, and in that beautiful playscape, and then the wonderful concrete area. We're going to lean into those opportunities so that your students can move and breathe fresh air and take their masks off. We have to, as Mr. Gostowski pointed out, have a one-way path through our hallways, but that also means that we get to enjoy a longer route, maybe to our specials class that takes us outside for another opportunity to remove our mask and to breathe some fresh air. We're embracing the opportunities to build strong friendships and partnerships by really locking arms in this effort together to keep our schools safe and open. The opportunity to prove to ourselves and to our scholars that human beings truly are magnanimous and magnificent creatures. Thank you. Thank you for putting your trust in Great Hearts Live Oak. Together, we truly will soar on wings of wisdom and strength. Go Owls.